everyone. Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have a gentleman with me here on the podcast. We're going to be talking about his show, talking about co-hosts and the fun, the joys, the challenges of having a co-host because, hey, you're going to experience this if you're going to have a co-host on your show, possibly. So let's learn together. Brent is here, and he's going to talk about his podcast. All great things podcasting. He's my co-host. He's not my guest. He's my co-host. And we're going to be doing this together. Brent, welcome to the How to Podcast series.
Thank you for having me.
It's exciting to have you here. I love meeting podcasters, and we joked before we hit record, having a podcaster as a guest is so refreshing because we don't have to worry about anything. It's pretty straightforward. But yeah, it's great to have you here. Thanks for making time to do this.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Tell us about your show. What's it all about? Where do we find it? Let's start right there.
Well, we can find it at sportstriviafaceoff.com. It is a sports trivia game show podcast where each other week, we bring in a couple of sports trivia experts and we start firing questions at them and we see who comes out on top. We've got people who knows things about sports that just absolutely blow me away. I'll read a question. It's like, man, this question's way too hard. And they're like, oh, that's this guy. I'm like, holy mackerel.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, we publish every other Monday. So we published one today. So go out and give it a listen. It's on Spotify. It's probably the easiest place to find it.
Okay.
And I have a lot of fun doing it. It's a labor of love. I'm not really in it to make money right now or to get anything out of it other than I enjoy doing it.
Good. Something that gives you joy and happiness. That's what podcasting should be about as the beginning part. Where you go from there, that's fine. But
yeah,
you should always love what you do, right? Mm-hmm. So what got you into this to begin with? How did you start?
I was a fan of another trivia podcast called Trivial Warfare. Okay. And they're a general sports trivia, or a general trivia, not just sports podcast. One of the finest. My friend Jonathan Oakes runs that. And he started fielding for ideas for pilots. And I said, well, I kind of like what you're doing, but I'm a big sports fan, so maybe I'll try that limiting to sports. And I got a couple of test players and put a demo together, and I sent it to him. And the whole time I'm thinking, boy, the audio's kind of rough on this. I hope he even airs it. And he came back and said, holy mackerel, this is produced better than half the podcasts that are out there. And this was just me tinkering around with Adobe Audition and putting things there and hitting buttons and see what they do and how it comes.
Had you done anything like this in the past before podcasting? Have you been on the microphone, speaking, anything?
I trained a little bit as a voice actor, but never anything where I was, speaking and all that stuff I was fine with. I host trivia, so I'm comfortable behind a microphone.
Good.
But as far as recording and producing and editing, and in the beginning I was writing, that was all new to me. It was, in the beginning, it was a real labor of love.
I love it. I can hear the voice actor in your voice, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. I love it. It's like in a world. You can just hear it, right? So I love it. It's great. It's beautiful. Okay, so you have done a journey with co-hosting. I only have this as my only opportunity to have a co-host. I have interview shows. I have solo hosted shows, blah, blah, blah. This is my only chance to have a co-host, and I love it because I get to meet great people.
Right.
It's more of a rotating thing, so people come in and out whenever they're available. But you have done co-hosted episodes way more than I have, so I'm here to learn.
Okay.
Talk about co-hosting. Let's start with the great things about co-hosting, and we'll go to some other stuff later. But what are some of the great things about having a co-hosted podcast?
Her name is Erin. I had a fantastic co-host. She was witty. She was funny. We jibed each other friendly. We had good stories to tell each other, and we played off of each other very well. And it really added a dynamic to, instead of me just firing questions like Jeopardy. It was more like 4 people sitting around and playing a game of Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
The stories came out great. The banter came out great. And we added her probably about 15 episodes in, and our numbers just shot up. It just added so much to the entertainment value and took the load off of me, quite frankly, because in the beginning, I was writing all the questions myself too. And any trivia person will tell you the hardest part about doing trivia is writing the questions.
Yeah.
Because they have to be of the right difficulty and not repeat things and all that, be diverse and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So she helped me write questions, and that was a big help to me because it was a load off of me to help get things on the air. The other great about having a co-host is if one of you has to miss a week, the show doesn't come to a complete stop. Like if I had a daughter going to Purdue at the time, and I'd make a lot of weekend trips up to West Lafayette, Indiana from here in St. Louis. And if I had a Purdue weekend, Erin was fine to pick up the ball, just solo host the podcast herself, and she did a great job.
Good. I love it. And it's nice that you can divide up the work. So it's not all one person doing everything. Was there anything else on top of that she helped you with, kind of behind the scenes?
Well, I think it was just really the camaraderie of being in it with somebody together. And every once in a while we'd IM each other. It's like, hey, I got this idea of somebody who could be on the show. Or it's like, oh, I got an idea. We should start doing cold open. And one of the ideas we came up mutually is we were recording one day, and one of our cats got right near the microphone and let out a perfect. So we started using that as our censor beep instead of a beep. When we dropped an F-bomb, we'd put the cat's meowing in there. And it was just one of those little stupid things that people found funny.
Yeah. I like it. As we do co-hosting stuff, there's one thing that I've always kind of wondered about is at the end of the day, somebody has to kind of own the podcast. Like you get one email address to set up your podcast under. You get one email address to set up your Instagram, if you do that, or your Facebook. So somebody owns an email address, which then kind of has the keys to the podcast, basically.
Yeah.
So, and then when you bring a co-host on, or you start with a co-host from day one, how do you kind of navigate having one person having a little bit more control over the content or the back end of the podcast? How do you kind of talk about that?
And I will say up front that one of the things I learned during this time of my life is I'm not a very good manager. And I'm kind of an anxiety overthinker, perfectionist type. And one of the things I had to realize when I brought other people on board is they may not be as emotionally invested in it as I am. And that's fine. Yeah. To them, it's a side thing that they do for me. And I compensated them very little, but a little. And where was I going with that? Oh, and I had the keys. It was, to them, it was a side project. It was my baby.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I sometimes would be a little bit over demanding, wanting things a certain way. But in the end of the day, it was my show.
Yeah.
So it was a fun line you walk there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you want them to have ownership. You want them to have a say and kind of help direct the show content and where we're going. But at the end of the day, somebody has to kind of decide we're going to go left or we're going to go right. Like we're going to talk about this topic or we're not going to talk about this topic. So somebody has to have a big idea for the show.
Yeah. And we usually were on the same page.
Good.
On that kind of stuff. There were times later on where things started to diverge a little bit, and I probably didn't handle those moments as well as I should have.
Yeah.
So it was a real learning experience for me about working with people. And the other thing is I wanted Erin, and later on we brought in a question writer named Ryan. I wanted them to have fun.
Yeah.
And saying, oh, I don't want you to read it this way. I wanted you to read it this way. Takes the fun out of it for him. And I didn't realize that at the time.
Yeah.
So
what kind of things have you learned as you look back over your time with your co-hosts, and what things maybe would have you done differently from the beginning with some of the things that you've learned through the process of just being a co-host?
Yeah, I was probably in touch a little too much. I was probably driving her a little bit nuts with the constant, hey, what about this? Hey, can we do this? She probably got a little sick of hearing from me a few times. But learning to, I won't say learning not to obsess about it, because I was going to obsess about it whether I did or not, but learning to keep it inside, or find a different outlet for it, vent to my wife about it, or whatever, and not say anything to either Ryan or Aaron. Yeah, there's a lot of things there that I wish I'd have done differently.
Yeah. It's good. So your co-hosting thing came to a point where there was a change that happened within the podcast.
Yeah.
And what we talked about when we had our little pre-chat was the response from your audience, which I love that your audience responded, because we talk into a microphone, goes into the world, and we don't know if anyone's even connecting with us or really loving it the way we love our podcast. So you did get feedback when there was a change, which A, we need to celebrate, but B, we need to kind of address. So what kind of things happen when things change with your co-host? What did you hear back from your listeners?
Well, it came at a really interesting time, because we were doing a Tournament of Champions kind of thing. We called it the Invitational, because we basically we basically picked out our best players and put them in a bracket format and let them figure out the champion. It was part way through that tournament that Erin decided to step away from the show, which is her right. And so we had that transition in the middle of the tournament. And I think my audience was kind of engrossed in the tournament to where they didn't say too much about it at the time. Right about that time was when the pandemic hit. And my boss came to me and said, you need to be prepared to be unemployed. And that was nice. When that's an alarming thing to hear your boss say. Yeah. Puts priorities in line. And at the end of the tournament, after the championship, I just said, no, I need to work on my career. I need to find another job. I need to start setting goals and do training and things like that. So that was when I shut the podcast down. And at the time, I had no intentions of ever starting it back up.
Interesting.
Fast forward a couple of years, and I'm with my voiceover coach as I'm trying to break into that business. And she said, if you had a podcast, that would really help things and help you practice on your delivery and your voiceover and stuff like that. And I said, well, I had a podcast, and the pandemic kind of killed it. And she's like, well, the pandemic's over now. You can get back to it. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I brought in a gentleman named Michael to be a new question writer, which obviously begged the question from my audience, what about Ryan? And I said, Ryan and I are fine. We just decided after the hiatus that I was going to go in a different direction. Yeah. No hard feelings. Yeah. People naturally asked about Aaron, and I just kind of had to say Aaron was no longer happy doing the podcast and left, and it's mostly my fault. It is what
interesting. Yeah.
And I will say my numbers are down, because I took a 2-year hiatus. That's only natural. Yeah. And the show really needs a podcast. The show really needs a co-host. Okay. To get that dynamic. Yeah. And I think that's what's lacking.
Okay. So you don't have a co-host in the seat right yet?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
The main reason being budget.
Yeah.
I'm currently in the hole a little bit each episode, and don't really want to go any further into the hole in each episode.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would be fair to ask somebody to take time out of their Saturdays to record and not make it up to them somehow.
Well, that's generous of you. I don't think everybody has that mindset, and I think we need it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great example for everyone, I think, to think that way. So thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, I love the fact that you are so well thought out, and you're so concerned about everyone to make sure everyone has their spot. That's a great. It speaks to you as a person. I love it.
Well, and it was also a lesson learned where I needed to pay a little bit more attention to what was going on with my, I don't want to call them staff, but with my cohorts, and making sure that they genuinely were happy. And at some point, I kind of lost track of that, where there were some brewing things that they were unhappy with that I didn't pick up on.
Yeah.
These things happen. Relationships, whether they be work relationships or friendships or romantic relationships, sometimes they just stall out.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're looking at doing voiceover work. Give us an update on that.
I've also had to put that on hold because I found out recently I'm definitely going to be employed this time. And actually that starts Friday. So I've once again had to put a project on the side burner. Thought this time voiceover should go on the side burner because I made progress with it before. It was something that was nice and compartmentalized where I could take it as a lump and just put it over here and forget about it.
Yeah.
But my website, if I can plug it, is theitvoice.com. I specialize in technical type voiceovers because I have an IT degree and an IT background. So, yeah, if you would like to hear me lend my voice to your project, I'd love to.
There we go. People can hire you then, right?
Absolutely.
Let's make you some money. Let's do that. That's a great thing. I'm in favor
of that, oddly enough.
Come on. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Just back the truck up and just dump the money right there on the front yard. I love it.
Yep.
And then we can get the co-host and get everything running and get back to the way we should be. Talk about rebuilding your audience after a little bit of a break. What kind of things have you done? What have you tried? What has worked? What's not worked?
Yeah.
Any thoughts for us?
One of the things I did have to do when I relaunched because of everything else that was going on, I went to an every other week. When the first incarnation was a podcast going on, it was every week.
Oh, wow.
I think that just became a little bit too much for everybody.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, during the tournament, when things came to a head and Aaron stepped away, we were actually doing 2 recordings a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a little too ambitious in hindsight. But that's why we learned. So I do every other week now, and the stress level is a lot less. Although a part of me is like, I get to that next Saturday and I'm like, boy, I'm kind of ready to record another podcast, and I got to wait another week.
Yeah.
Because the guys that we have on the show are just fantastic. They're all good people. They're smart people. They're nice people. They're good people to talk to. As far as building my audience, it just hasn't gone the way I like. As a matter of fact, my numbers have been dropping ever since I relaunched. And I'm not quite sure why, other than I have gotten a lot of feedback that said, "Where's Aaron?" And it's like, guys, Aaron's not coming back. That's just what it is. I might get a co-host, but it's not going to be her.
Yeah.
So I think that's hurt. I haven't done a lot of promotion outside. One of the problems is my fan group. At some point in time in the old show, my fan group on Facebook got marked as private, which means you can't share things outside of it. Oh, I had to create another page where people could go and share their podcast if they were going to be on. And that became I think that's a pain in the butt to do, and people just don't do it.
Yeah.
So I've got to solve that problem somehow, where people can post on their own social media, hey, I'm going to be on this podcast this week. Also, being here, I think will probably help. I'll be very transparent in that. That's one of the things I'm hoping to get out of this. But I need to work harder at it. And with everything going on with the unemployment and me trying to get as much training in my head as I can, I'm not into podcasting to make $1 bazillion. I'm mostly here to have fun.
Yeah.
So sometimes I get a little depressed about the numbers, but then I realize, I got people contributing to make it not such a terrible financial hit, and I like doing it. So we're going to keep doing it.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I like your perspective. And I like the fact, too, that you admit and you learn as you go. And unfortunately, that relationship ended, but you have a plan. So I like it. I like it.
Thank you.
What other challenges are you facing in your podcast at the moment? You have to grow your audience, which is great. We're all in the same boat there.
Yeah.
What other things are you kind of working through on your podcast that you can talk about?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of big changes on the horizon unless somebody comes in and starts donating $100 to me every month and I can hire a co-host. But I'm kind of just going to see how it goes for a while. And it's not completely broken, so I'm not going to fix it. People have liked it before, and I think people will like it again.
Yeah. Did you mention that some of your audience is supporting you to some degree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well? In the first few weeks, I had a lot of feedback about, man, I'm so glad you came back. And that was really good to hear. Yeah. It's good to hear from good people, people whose opinions I value. So that was a real boost for me. And those are really the people that I'm doing this for. Kind of lost my train of thought for a second here. And yeah, I just keep it as a fun thing. I keep it in perspective. It is not the most important thing in my life. And if it has to take a back seat to something, it has to take a back seat to something.
Yeah.
I don't stress about it too much.
Is there anything in podcasting that you hear talked about and you're like, I don't know if I really agree with that statement. It doesn't work for me in my show.
Yeah, I get a lot of those mass emails about, this guy started a podcast and made $20,000 in the first 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, if you have your podcast for the purpose of selling your product, that's great. But I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just here to entertain people for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's getting out of that is all I need.
I like it. Have you thought about doing something different on your off weeks when you don't have a scheduled recording? Maybe something just you and the audience?
What I do is in every game, there are 45 questions, but yet only 30 of them get used in the game based on the way the format is. So to our Patreon folks on the off Monday, I give them the 15 questions that weren't used and see if they can test themselves against that. Turns out to be about a short 10-minute thing. And it's just a little thank you for contributing.
Nice. I'm curious. Talk about Patreon. What are some good ideas? What should we do when we're setting up our Patreon account? Maybe what are some things we should avoid? Yeah,
Patreon has changed a little bit since I first set it up. They don't have the goals anymore, which kind of was a thing that I was doing. I'm going to log into my Patreon account real quick, just so I can jog my memory.
Yeah.
Where is my Patreon link? There's my Patreon link. One of the things that I had trouble with transferring from the old show to the new show is they now have things in tiers.
Okay.
Where you contribute in the $1 tier, the $5 tier, and the $10 tier. Well, I had people who obviously put their contributions on hiatus when I stopped the show, but happily I sent out an email, said, everybody, if you were contributing, I'm restarting your contribution. If you don't want me to, send an email. I'll be happy to turn it off. And most people did not. But it's been a difficult thing to get them into those same tiers so that I can say, hey, if you subscribe at this tier for 3 months, I'll send you a mug, or I'll send you a sticker, or I'll send you whatever. So that's a little bit of administrative pain that, excuse me a second.
Yeah.
I have to have these elbow pads and I dropped them on the floor.
Yeah.
So I like Patreon. I like the idea of Patreon. I think there are bits and pieces of it that's not executed the way I would execute it if I was building it.
Yeah.
I'd rather have it a little bit more free form to set up as I like. Now, that being said, I am an IT guy. I'm a power user. I like to tinker. Nothing makes me happier than a settings menu.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
So I like to get in and customize and dig deep into things. So this probably is a little bit easier for people who may not be as tech savvy.
Yeah, I like it. Jumping back again to the voiceover stuff, one thing I get asked a lot is, Dave, do you know anybody who can do my intros and outros for my podcast? Who can I hire?
Mm-hmm.
Who can record it for me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can go to some site and hire a stranger,
mm-hmm.
but I'd rather work with somebody one-on-one,
right,
so that I can have something for my show. Are you open to that as well?
Absolutely. I did an intro to mine, which I've actually thought about changing because it's my voice on the intro, and then I reintroduce myself, which is a little bit goofy. So I've thought about getting a female voiceover to come in and do my intro for me, just to break things up a little bit.
Nice.
But yeah, I'd love to do podcast intros and promos and outros and all that kind of good stuff. And I have gotten pretty adept with Audition to make them sound good. So yeah, hit me up at itvoice.com or on sportstriviafaceoff.com. I'm everywhere.
Okay, I need you to do something for me.
Okay.
I need you to record for me a commercial about you doing voiceover work that I can put in my 7 different podcasts.
Okay.
Because I have a I get a varying audience of people that are looking for this. And I would love to promote you. I'd rather promote you than a mattress. That doesn't do anything for anybody. For me, my sake, I'd rather promote friends of the show and send people your way. So can you create like a radio type commercial about what you do for voiceover acting? And I would like to spread that out through my shows. Can you send me that in the future?
Absolutely. I can probably do it in a couple of days.
There you go. I love it. Okay, so everyone listen up. It's coming.
That's right.
You need a voiceover actor. He's right here. Brett's ready to do it.
That's right.
I love it. I love it. What else in podcasting, Brett, right now is kind of top of mind for you? You're a tech guy, so like we have YouTube getting in the space. We have Google is leaving the space. There's a lot of news happening in podcasting. Mm-hmm. How much of the news side of podcasting do you follow?
Not a whole lot, because quite frankly, I like what I'm doing. And I hear a lot about AI, and AI is a double-edged sword for me, because as an IT guy, AI can do a lot of work for me. But as a voiceover performer, I'm very leery of AI taking over the whole voiceover industry.
Interesting.
So I try to walk that fine line. As far as voiceover, I always say hire a human, because you're never going to get a AI voice, at least not I see in the next 10 years, to give the nuances that a human voice can give you.
Right. Yeah.
Other than that, no, again, with the AI, I see YouTube clips about AI can help edit your podcast, and AI can help take the breaks out and make them sound better and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, I like doing that stuff. I want to be hands-on. Might take a little bit more time, might be more inefficient, but I'm a get my hands dirty kind of guy. I want to be doing that stuff.
There's a sense of pride in there. Right?
Yeah.
That's my work. I made that sound good, and my audience likes it. So that's a little piece of me that I'm putting out into the world. It's kind of like a resume.
Yeah.
In a sense, right?
Yeah. It is my baby, and I'm going to do it my way.
Okay, Brent, talk to a brand new podcaster, baby podcaster, very early days of their show. You have great experience. You have great learnings to share with them. What would you say to a new podcaster to encourage them on their path of creating their podcast?
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just start talking. Find a niche if you can. If you don't have your show narrowed down to a certain audience, it's going to be all over the place and people aren't going to know what to expect.
Right.
Have a schedule so that people know when to expect new content from you. And have fun. Yeah. Do what you want to do. It's yours. There's no formula for, there are suggestions and there are commonalities, but man, it's your deal. Make it what you want. And don't compromise.
That's a good point. Expand that a little bit. Don't compromise.
Yeah. If you're going to be the owner of it, you need to own it. And you need to know when people make suggestions to say, that's not a bad idea. Or, no, not going to do that. Not the way I want to do it. Why not? I don't want to. That's a good enough reason.
Yeah. Yes. If you had comments come back to you from your listener or somebody saying, hey, Brent, love the podcast. Can you make it into a 5-minute episode and do it 3 times a day? No. No, I'm not going to do that. Thank you for your feedback. Maybe the show's not for you.
Yeah. I can do that. I won't do that.
Right. So not every piece of feedback is to be executed, just so you know.
Yeah.
Always thank people for feedback. That's great. They reached out to you. That is huge.
Yeah.
Anytime an email pops in or I get voice messages through SpeakPipe on my website, every time I get that, I'm just like, I had somebody left me a voice message today and they sang to me.
Oh, wow.
They're just singing in the background and they loved my show or something in the show and they left me a singing message. I'm like, cool. This is unique. So I sent them a message back. I didn't sing. My wife's like, wait, did you sing? No, I didn't sing. I talked. And, but it's so nice just to see that thing pop up because good or bad, any kind of comment takes a lot of effort for somebody to do. Because if somebody doesn't like your show, they're just going to stop listening.
Right.
And you'll never know. They just don't, they're not there.
And I even, in our fan group, I will just pose that question. I'll just say, hey guys, I'm not looking for pats on the back egregiously. I'm not looking for kudos. What can I do better?
Good.
And I take those all very seriously, especially from my Patreon contributors, of course. One other thing I would go back and add is try and build a community. I have my fan page and I'm always posting sports related stuff to it, either funny stuff or trivia things that they might want to keep in mind. One of the things that came out today was the 5 sports that are going to be added to the Olympics in Los Angeles. And I had a couple of people say, yep, I'm going to memorize that for trivia next week. So
nice.
So yeah, I try to build a community and get to know my listeners. And I think that's huge.
So I'm noticing behind you, is that the Stanley Cup behind you?
It's a miniature Stanley Cup.
There you go. And is that the Leafs jersey above it?
I have a Leafs jersey.
There you go.
I collect jerseys. I have like 40, 45, maybe even 50. I lost count. I have been a long-suffering St. Louis Blues fan since 1985, and they finally rewarded me with my Stanley Cup in 2019.
There you go.
And I had always had put away an emergency budget for St. Louis Blues Stanley Cup championship swag, and I burned every penny.
Well, congratulations. You're a proud papa there in that moment. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Did you get to hoist your own cup around the house in that moment?
No, the whole thing was kind of surreal to me. It was like, my God, I've waited all this time for this and now it's happening. I mean, obviously I wouldn't put it up there with my marriage or the birth of my kids.
No.
But it was just like, wow. And there's a line in an old Genesis song that says, all the time that passed me by doesn't seem to matter now. And that was a line that kept coming back to me. It was like, I don't care about the last 30 years, and I don't even care about the next 30 years. I wanted one, and I got it.
Well, the Toronto fans would probably agree with you right now because they're so frustrated here in Canada.
Well, Matthews is on fire, though.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, exactly. But I always try to remind everybody, I live in Ontario. So I like to poke the bear a little bit.
Yeah.
And I always say, hey, everyone, just a reminder, there's actually 2 teams in Ontario. Everybody forgets about Ottawa, but I cheer for Ottawa when I'm in a group of Leaf fans in their presence, just to make them angry.
Oh, absolutely. They're the best fans to troll.
I love it. So yeah, see, we've already slipped right into it. I love this.
That's
this
right.
Is great. Yeah. So, okay. Big plans for your podcast going forward. You're going, I know you're going to get a co-host. That's just going to happen.
Yeah.
So we're already anticipating that. Where do you kind of want to see the show go? Just keep it fun, keep it light. That's where you want to go. Yeah. You're good with that.
Other than adding a co-host, my real goal would be, other than making it weekly, I'd keep it every other week, is get it back to what it used to be and go from there.
So, Brent, if someone's listening to the podcast and they are a diehard sports fan, they would love to come, maybe even just for one episode, just to kind of say hi and be a part of it. Would you be open to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're kind of doing that right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that could be a short-term fix.
Yeah.
When you can't afford to pay for somebody.
Yeah.
Have them kind of drop
if they're willing to do it on an unpaid basis, just or exposure for their own podcast.
We're doing it right now, Brent. We can do it. You could do this. You could do this, which could then give you that little spark.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if somebody is listening to this podcast, they're a sports fanatic and they love the idea of your show, how do they connect with you about coming on and maybe just having a conversation before recording, just to see if there's a connection there?
Yeah, easiest way would be to go to sportstriviafaceoff.com. And then you go there, and along the top of the links, there is, among the things of, about the show and things like that, there's one Google form that you can fill out to be a contestant. If you want to get on our roster of people we email every month to see if you want to be a contestant. And there's also a contact me, which will just shoot me an email. And that's a really good way to get in touch with me.
Great. And the same way for hiring you for voice acting would be the same spot?
Yeah, they can.
Or did you go south? You're okay.
I have like 5 different websites, so.
Yeah, I have a problem too with that. But yeah, so that's it. Either way, they can go to either website. We'll make sure we have links in the show notes for all that.
Okay.
Excited to, maybe this is the little spark, Brent, just having you on here and having you as a guest co-host on my show. Maybe that just opens the door a little bit for you on your show.
I would love that.
Right.
And I'm very grateful to you for having me on.
It's exciting. And that's the idea behind having amazing podcasters on the podcast as guest co-hosts. I want people to connect with you and your show. I want people to hire you for voiceover acting. I want a guest co-host to sit in with you and do a recording and give you that little spark to ignite your podcast again.
Yeah.
This is what it's meant to be. We're supposed to work together as podcasters.
Absolutely.
We're not supposed to be on our own, trying to figuring it out by ourselves. We're supposed to work together and support each other.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I fall down on a little bit is networking, only because, again, I've been saying this a lot, but I got a lot of irons in the fire right now. Yeah. And that seems to be one thing that drops off. I need to do a better job of networking, especially on Facebook.
Okay. Well, we connected, and I'm grateful for that. And I would love to get an update from you in the future.
Absolutely.
So, as we do our podcast journey together and separately at the same time, I would love to hear from you in the future and have you come back and give us an update on the show.
I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Again, tell everybody, where do we go? Where do we find you? Everything, all the stuff.
SportsTriviaFaceoff.com. You can also find it on Spotify under Sports Trivia Faceoff. And if you're interested in my voiceover work, you can either contact me through Sports Trivia Faceoff, or my website for that, where my demos are, is theitvoice.com.
Great website names, by the way. Very well done.
Thank
I love
you.
it. Everyone go check it out. Brent, thank you so much for being a guest co-host. You are coming back. I want an update from you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hey, it's Dave jumping on here at the end. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for listening to the How to Podcast series. Putting this out there for you. You're starting a podcast and you're like, Dave, the technology is giving me a headache. This editing thing is, I don't know. It's banana pants. I can't figure it all out. And you're thinking, if there was somebody who could help me with my podcast, I would pay them to do the editing for me. Guess what? I'm actually doing that. I have clients now, past guests who've been on the show, on one of my other podcasts, on this podcast. I'm doing some podcast consulting. I'm doing podcast editing. I'm helping with people launching their podcast, getting it, all the technology stuff, getting your podcast in all the players, helping you with your YouTube channel, your website. Oh, it just goes on and on. It goes on and on. And I would love to help you. So instead of going to Fiverr or Upwork, I've been on there. I keep trying to get on for jobs and nobody's paying attention to me. And I need attention. I would rather work with you as a listener of the show. So here's what I'm saying. Go to howtopodcast.ca, leave me a voice message, tell me what you need, and let's work out something that works for you and your budget. And if you need full service or you just need something quick like a drive-through type service, I'm there for you. I got you. And if you like what you hear on any of my 7 podcasts, I can do that for you. I can. And I'd love to work with you because you are amazing. And I'm there to help you, whatever you need. howtopodcast.ca. Reach out, let me know what I can do to help you with your podcast. Thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Take care.